All right, guys, welcome back to the Big Vision podcast. We have a super special guest back on the podcast. But before we get into that, I just want to thank our partner, First Responder Blinds, for sponsoring the podcast on a continual basis. If you need blinds, plantation shutters, or roller shades, you want to give them a call. And remember, windows need heroes too. I want to go ahead and read this. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Big Vision podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host, podcast staff, sponsors, or affiliate organizations. This podcast is intended for informational, educational, and public discussion purposes only. All guests are given equal opportunity to share their perspective, and the same goes on the opposite side for the guests. They don't necessarily align or come into agreement with what the podcast views are. So everybody, welcome to the Big Vision podcast. Nicholas Cognasi, candidate for Autauga County Sheriff. Welcome, brother.
Again, Corey.
How are you?
Oh, doing well.
That's good. Today's conversation is focused on transparency, leadership, public safety, and Nicholas Cognasi's career and experience as a sheriff's deputy. Well, how's it been going, brother?
Oh, it's been going well. The campaign has been, full blast. Finally, it's starting to just kind of roar down with less than a week left to go, and got to see and meet some great people and got to share what my visions and plans with everybody's vote on May 19th elected, as sheriff, what I would do, and I've got some good positive feedback from it, and it's been great to see the different parts of the county. Obviously we've had a forum in Pine Level, we had a forum in Jones, we had a forum in Prattville. It's been great to see the different parts of the counties and the organizations that's put those forums on.
Yes, it's to me it's quite historical what's going on with the sheriff's race right now. The Sheriff Sedinger, unfortunately passed away, and the governor had to come in and appoint Sheriff Harold, and it's quite unique and quite historical. That there's 4 candidates that are campaigning right now, and man, I just think it's an exciting time for the county, and all the candidates are great, and man, I'm just glad that you decided to come on here.
Absolutely.
And I thank you for taking that time to come on here. But let's get right in here. Okay? Tell us a little about yourself and your background growing up.
Absolutely. So I was actually originally born in West Texas.
Texas. Come on now.
I'm a Texas guy. All my extended family still lives there, so I go back quite often. Actually, we just went in March. My brother got married, so we went to Houston. I got to take the family there. It was a new part of Texas they haven't seen. So got to go there, have fun. But originally from Texas, my dad worked for Schwann's. I don't know if you know Schwann's. They used to be the big yellow trucks that delivered food to your house. And
you see this body? Yeah, I know that big yellow truck. Come on.
I tell everybody it was Uber Eats before Uber Eats was a thing. But so we moved up towards near Chicago for a brief bit. He just kept getting promoted. And then he got promoted again, and we moved down here in 96, and he was over Schwann's for all the state of Mississippi and Alabama.
Wow.
And moved here in 96 and lived in Autauga County since we first moved here. Grew up out in Pine Level. So I tell people I remember when Pine Level was just the gas stations on 65.
Yes.
And that one little bit of one out there towards Posey's Crossroads. And, there was nothing out there. But I swear, I tell people that Pine Level I think we were holding it back, because as soon as we moved into Prattville, that's when Subway and all them others started opening up. But moved back to Prattville after high school, and went to AUM. Actually got a degree in history and political science.
Oh, wow.
And was going to be a history teacher, but I graduated during the recession. And, not many people were hiring teachers at the time.
Yeah.
I had some friends that were police officers and said, hey, why don't you come get a job being a police officer? So became a police officer, and my first day of the streets, I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I was able to help somebody my first day, and it really stuck to me. Yeah. So stayed with that and got my master's in Homeland Security Emergency Management.
Wow.
And between all that, did a stint in the Army Reserves. I was an engineer officer for combat engineer company. So now I'm running for sheriff.
Man, that sounds incredible. And, you know, I'll tell you what, if you ain't been in Pine Level lately, that place
It's
is
booming.
booming. That's
I
it.
tell people that's going to be the next Pike Road. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember when Pike Road was hardly nothing, and now look at it. So I think Pine Level is just on its way up.
Yeah, you know, they have in my opinion, they have an incredible mayor.
Absolutely.
And listen, if you guys haven't seen the episode where he came on the podcast, you need to go watch it. There's some incredible things happening in Pine Level. Let me ask you this. What first inspired you to pursue a career in law enforcement?
So, like I said, I got a degree in history and political science, and like I said, I want to be a history teacher. I still love history. I tell my kids whenever they're studying for history, you got a living history book in the house that you can study off of. But I became a police officer because they weren't hiring teachers. And at first I thought, well, I'll do this, and maybe I'll become a school resource officer, and that's how I can get my foot in the door becoming a teacher. But my first call, I don't know what my first call, but it was my first day on the streets. There was a domestic call, and we responded. Me and my field training officer, we responded to it, and as soon as we roll up, gentleman on the front porch, got all belligerent and ran inside. And as soon as we got out of the car and we saw him run inside, we started going after him, because we didn't know what was going on. And we started hearing him, screams for help and stuff like that. He continued the abuse. And I guess he didn't realize we were coming. And, we get in there, we get him. There's another individual there that was going for a gun that was on the kitchen counter. And I went for that person, was able to get a hold of him. And, that person that was being abused that called 911, just the look of just almost salvation, I would guess you could say, because, we ended up taking, them to jail, and just how happy they were that we were there to help them. And, my field training officer, he said, man, you did a great job. A lot of people, first day on the street, they'd have froze up. They wouldn't know what to do. And, I was able to, get into the action and make sure that we were safe and that the person that called us was safe. And literally from then, I told myself, I don't see myself doing anything else.
That's a great quality to have. Let me ask you this question. Tell us a little bit about your job and what you do now.
Absolutely. So, a deputy sheriff, and this is what I tell people, deputy sheriffs, because I started working at a municipal agency. I worked for Montgomery Police Department to begin with. And after I left Montgomery Police Department, I went to go work for a sheriff's office. And sheriff's department and a police department are completely two different animals. With the police department, you have some court, you have a municipal court, but you really don't deal much with court. And you just answer calls. That's it. Some cities have jails, most of them don't. With the sheriff's office, not only do you have the usual answering calls, but you have the county jail that's required by the state constitution. Every sheriff's office is going to have a county jail. You're going to process civil paperwork. So anytime that there is somebody that's served with either jury, wage garnishment, divorce, whatever it may be, it's a sheriff's deputy that goes out there and serves that. Probate pickups, that's something else that people don't understand. When the probate judge, somebody goes to the probate judge and says, my family member is suffering from some sort of mental health issue and they need to see a doctor. He's refusing to go, and they, go before the probate judge with their evidence. The probate judge says, yes, this person needs to go see a doctor and see if it can be diagnosed with some sort of mental illness, get on some sort of mental health plan to get that person better. It's the sheriff's deputies that goes out and serves that paperwork, picks that person up, takes them to the hospital. They also do, the jail. I can't remember if I already said that. There's a lot to the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
So on top of school resource officers and everything else. So, the sheriff's office is a unique law enforcement agency than any other law enforcement agency in the state. State troopers, municipal agencies, whatever. Sheriff's office does a lot more because that's what's required by, the government, the county government, the state constitution. That's what the sheriff's office does.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. What do you think, if you're elected, what do you personally add to the Sheriff's Department of Autauga County if you're elected sheriff?
Well, so something that I think I can add to the sheriff's office is provide more service, better service to the citizens of Autauga County. Something that I've been, passionate about and big about is that, if you live in a rural part of the county, you can, you call 911 because not even for law enforcement, for some sort of medical emergency, which is a lot of times what the issue is. I'm either not feeling well or I've fallen down and I can't, older people falling down, can't get up, heart attack, whatever it may be. They call 911 and, volunteer firefighters, they do a great job. It's a great, honor that people take upon themselves to fulfill that role. But there's certain times, whether it's holidays, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be, you might not, have the availability of those volunteers. The county does have a contract with Haynes Ambulance to where they're supposed to have 2 ambulances in the county to respond to those calls. But you're still looking between 30 to maybe 60 minutes or longer for that help to get there. Tuscaloosa County has EMT trained deputy program. So deputies are trained as EMTs. They carry the same supplies as EMTs. They don't do transportations, which I feel that's something for an ambulance service, but they are there to provide that service, to provide that life-saving care, to stabilize somebody until an ambulance gets there. That's something I think that could be of great benefit to this county. Something else too is I want and I call balls and strikes.
Yeah.
I do believe Sheriff Hale does a good job on trying to get to the community and connect with them. But there's just different things that I think should be done. Connecting more with the youth. He just had the fishing rodeo, which is a great way. But there's other things that you can do, like a junior deputy program or explorers program. When I was growing up, they had it, police explorers.
Yeah.
If you were interested in law enforcement, or if your parents just basically wanted you to do something after school to get you out of the house and out of trouble, you could join the explorers program. That's something I'd like to bring to engage in the youth, and then also to either inspire those people that are looking to go into law enforcement when they grow up, so they can see what law enforcement does, and gives them that experience, or say like oh well, I was thinking about doing being a road deputy, but I want to be a jailer, or vice versa, or I wanted to be canine, but I like being an I liked what the investigators did, that kind of stuff. So that's something I want to bring. There's some explorers programs at other sheriff's offices around here that are great, and I mean, most of the people that go through those explorers programs either become deputies or they join the military, and then they have some of that regimented, style of, hey, this is what I do. I go through a sergeant that goes to a lieutenant, that kind of stuff, and it gets them ready for that life after high school. So that's something that I'd like to bring to Autauga County, on top of just leadership and administrative capabilities.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I remember being a little boy, and I always grew up, I don't know about you, but in my house, my dad and my papa, they watched Westerns.
Oh yeah, same with my dad,
man,
my granddad. Yeah.
I would see the sheriff. I mean, I always wanted to be in law enforcement, and of course, the Lord had different plans for me. But I think that's a great idea for the community. Let me ask you this: what are some things the public may not fully understand about the daily life of deputies?
Absolutely. So, and this is something else, again, going to work from municipal agency to a county agency. Boy, it's different because, when you work for a municipal agency and you go to a call and you need backup, well, your backup's there probably 5 minutes or less. Yeah. If you're a county deputy, your backup could be 30, 40 minutes away. And, and this is something, having gone from a municipal agency to a county agency, and then not only that, just new deputies that come out of the academy that start their training. I tell them, like, you got to learn, don't be that butthole when you show up on a scene and start throwing your weight around. Just think because you got that badge, it automatically gives you a little bubble that's going to protect you. No, you need to treat people with respect until proven otherwise. You know, you need to make sure that you just automatically treat somebody with, you know, yes sir, yes ma'am, that kind of stuff, Mr. so and so, Mrs. so and so. That, you know, it really shows people that you're there not just to throw your weight around and to, you know, my word is the final word. No, let me hear what you have to say. Let me hear what they have to say. Let me see what's going on. Let's see, you know, do I even need to be here? Most of the time when law enforcement's called, it's not even really a law enforcement problem. It's just they need somebody to kind of play a middleman because they got into an argument with their, you know, significant other. They got into an argument with their neighbor because their dog's coming over and crapping on the lawn or something like that. There's a lot of that goes on. And, you know, that's something that's huge. And, you know, something that I'll never forget, you know, there was a homicide up in Tuscaloosa. And they have a task force up there that's got the University of Alabama Police, Tuscaloosa, and the County Sheriff's Office all on it. And they come down, and we assisted them because the suspect was from our jurisdiction. And we go, and we're just kind of there to make sure that, you know, nobody, you know, gets into it with them, stuff like that. But they're running their deal. And I just see how the different investigators are talking to people. And I see one just kind of does that, you know, just starts throwing the weight around, all that kind of stuff. And then the other one's like, hey, come here, let me talk to you. And talk to him. Boy, that person got a whole lot more out of them than that person. I told the new guy, I said, I bet you can tell you which one works for the sheriff's office.
That's it.
Because the sheriff's office is more connected to the people, I believe, than any other agency.
You know, one thing I didn't know is I didn't know how important the sheriff was to the county.
Absolutely.
So could you just share with the viewers your opinion on how the sheriff and the sheriff's department is different from like the city police department and stuff like that? How are those two different?
Absolutely. Like I said, you know, the big thing is, you know, like I was talking about, serving papers, you know, doing whether it be evictions or probate pickups or anything like that. You know, if you are trying to, you know, get a divorce and you are waiting for your spouse to be served, you know, that takes, you know, that prolongs the process. You know, a lot of times whenever something is served on somebody, they might have an old address. But, you know, the sheriff's deputy, that if he's been there and he's connected to the community, is like, well, you know, John Smith, you know, that's an old address. I know John Smith now lives over here and not there. So they can, you know, get and do their job better by being more engaged with the community. Police officers, like I said, you know, police officers, you know, they do their job. They answer calls, but they are, you know, different in the fact that that's all they do. You know, they might sit in municipal court whenever tickets or misdemeanors need to come before a municipal court. But, you know, everything that is felony and above, you know, goes before the district, the circuit court. You know, it doesn't go into municipal court. So, and, you know, they don't have a court as often as counties do. So it's a big difference between a police department and a county sheriff's office because of the roles and responsibilities that's given to them. And like I said, you know, the police chief is appointed by the mayor. The mayor is elected by the people, but, you know, the police chief answers to the mayor. The sheriff is directly elected by the people. The sheriff answers to the people, and he has to answer to the people every 4 years, because if he doesn't, then they'll vote him out.
Yep. What would you say has been the greatest accomplishment in your law enforcement career?
My greatest accomplishment is definitely, you know, the people that I help. You know, there's instances of, you know, where I went to a call of an unruly teenager, and I get out there and, you know, my corporal's on scene and he's kind of running things, but I'm listening and I'm like, man, something just doesn't seem right with that mother. She's changed her story a couple times, you know, that kind of stuff. And, you know, once I said, hey, you know, Corporal, come on over here. Do you notice this, this, and this? And, you know, he's kind of already just kind of tossing the teenagers, just an unruly teenager, that kind of stuff. And I said, you know, ask her this, ask her that. And I go up there and start asking. And then we realized, like, this woman is having a mental health crisis, you know, and she's just kind of going through it, blaming it on her daughter. And so, we ended up contacting, DHR and getting her into a new home and trying to get her mother the help. And man, I'll just never forget that teenage girl. She was 17 at the time, come and just start bawling, crying, because she says, every time police comes out here, they always take my mother's side. They don't listen to me. They just assume that I'm just a kid, that I'm unruly. And she just was bawling. And I remember, while we were waiting for her to go someplace else, she was, I was just asking her about, hey, what you want to do? You're about to graduate. What you going to do? She says, I want to join the Air Force. She ultimately ended up joining the Air Force. And, another instance as well, just recently, there was a homicide case where I was the lead investigator on. And this homicide occurred in 2019, and they just had the trial in 2026. Sometimes it takes the wheels of justice that long to move along. And I remember talking to the family. The family, I went up and saw them afterwards, and I said, hey, how you doing? How have y'all been? How's, the victim's son? Because he had a young son at the time that he was killed. And they said, I appreciate it, Cognasi. You said when you started investigating this case is that you're going to make sure that you're here for every step and to make sure that justice is served. And here we are 6 years later, and you still are doing that, and we appreciate it. And it's just the things like that I believe, even when I'm an old man with Alzheimer's and dementia, that's stuff that's just going to still stick in my brain, and just remember the people that I've helped.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, especially for somebody who's running for such a important position, that they know that you're a man of your word.
Absolutely.
And that you will do what you say you're going to do. So let me ask this. How important is communication and transparency between law enforcement and the community?
It's huge. Whenever you hear gripes from other deputies or from the public, it seems like it almost always boils down to communication. Whether it's miscommunication or no communication. And I believe, communication is key. One thing that I remember that we did when I ran patrol and when I was an officer in the Army is that at the beginning, either of the week or drill weekend or field training, whatever it is, the leaders come together and we have a meeting. We establish, hey, this is what our goal or our mission is, and this is, how I expect you to do it. And, not micromanage, but you expect them to, hey, this is what, we need to get to the 100-yard line. We need to do it, either in 4 downs or less, before we get another first down, that kind of stuff. You need to come up with a plan, and you need to make sure that you are all on the same page and you can understand, hey, this is what we need to do. Is there anything that you need from me? Whether it be equipment, personnel, whatever it is. And that's something that's important for the deputies, the jailers, the employees of the sheriff's office, and then also for the citizens as well, because it's the same thing. If you are going to say, 14 is a very dangerous road. I mean, ever since I've been living in Autauga County that I can remember, you always hear of bad wrecks on 14s and deaths. And it seems like whenever there's a wreck there, it's just somebody's getting airlifted or transported to the hospital, that kind of stuff. If, the sheriff wants to lower that, one thing that he's going to do is he's going to make sure people aren't going 70, 80 miles an hour. They're not passing people in curves when it's double yellow line, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So that's something you can, communicate to the citizenry. Hey, as I'm the sheriff, I've seen that we've had this many accidents, this many fatalities on this road, or I've known, hey, there's been this many 4-wheelers stolen or lawnmowers stolen, whatever it may be. I'm going to make sure that we're out here, for the immediate time being. Obviously, you're not going to tell the criminals your whole plan, but you're going to let them know, hey, we're going to be here, and we're going to kind of try and, prevent you or catch you doing what you're doing. And you just let the citizenry know, hey, this is what the steps we're doing to try and address the concerns that you may have or that you have brought to us. And that doesn't have to necessarily mean going to every Sunday school or every church service, every town hall. It could be just something as simple as putting a Facebook post or a video out there. You know, in the world of social media, man, it's so easy to get your message across. And, you know, I feel that is where communication to, you know, the sheriff's office employees and the citizenry is a huge, you know, huge tool that we could use, social media. But you also have to put in that legwork to go out there and be seen, just because of the fact you don't want to just be seen through a phone screen. You want to be seen in person. So you know, that's, you know, going out, being seen, but then also using the tools that are available. Here we are in 2026, you know, to put your message and communicate to the citizenry.
Yep, you're right about that. You know, one thing that I've noticed, and you know, it appears to be that crime is just skyrocketing in Montgomery,
Yes.
and you know, it's very difficult to even drive down the road in Montgomery without smelling drugs. Let me ask this: how do you address crime prevention in the county?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, besides just good old law enforcement, you know, you need to make sure that you look at what's been done, see what's been successful, see what's not been successful, and plan and readjust. You know, readjust and plan. You know, you need to make sure that deputies are actually in their districts, not just, you know, in one spot or hanging out at the office or shopping in Prattville or whatever. You need to make sure that they're out there and they're patrolling. You need to make sure they're in those high crime areas. You know, something that you can do is you can look at and say, all right, you know, well, we had a rash of thefts in Billings or Jones or wherever it may be. And, you know, we need to make sure that, hey, you know, you need to be in this area because that's where most of the thefts occur. So, you know, there's that. And then also there's just, you know, partnerships and cooperations. You know, Montgomery County Sheriff Derek Cunningham and the governor have done a great job with this Metro Area Crime Suppression Unit, trying to address that crime in Montgomery. Well, you know, the key word at that, in my opinion, is metro. You know, what unfortunately happens in Montgomery doesn't usually just stay in Montgomery. You know, if you look at crime that occurs, a lot of it occurs along those major thoroughfares, 31, 65, because those criminals know all they got to do is just hop on the interstate or the highway and they can go back to Montgomery. You know, if you have that partnership, you know, maybe have a Autauga County deputy or investigator or whatever, you know, and then Elmore County as well, Prattville, whatever, you know, a part of some sort of metro crime suppression unit, you can, you know, use those resources. It's already being done with drug task force. You know, there's task force for, you know, narcotics. There's task force for U.S. Marshals, ATF, DEA, whatever it may be. You know, it's the plan and framework's already there. It could be used for other things as well, like, you know, like I said, the speeders and the reckless drivers on the highways, or you know, street takeovers is a big thing. You know, I know a lot of people, you know, in this campaign have told me that, boy, they hate it seeing four-wheelers or side-by-sides going 50, 60 miles an hour down the county road, because, you know, that's a danger not only to, you know, either their kids or loved ones that are driving, but it's a danger to those people as well. So that's something that we could use in Autauga County to make it more safe for its citizenry.
Mm-hmm. You know, something I want to talk about is mental health. You know, a lot of times people just don't understand what law enforcement, what police officers, deputies, what you guys actually go through. Let me ask this: how important is supporting first responders mentally and emotionally?
It's a huge thing, you know, and, you know, I say first responders, all first responders, whether it be sheriff's deputies, jailers, firefighters, even dispatchers. You know, dispatchers is a huge one as well, because, you know, they take that initial call, but they never have any resolution. They don't know what happens after, you know, law enforcement or fire department or EMTs get there. You know, so it is a a group effort, in my opinion, to make sure that we all support each other. And there are programs out there like peer support. That's something that I've gotten trained in to do peer support. And peer support is a huge part of it because something when you said that made me kind of think about it was line of duty deaths. It's something unfortunately I've had to deal with in my career. And I just remember, going to the scene and trying to be professional, but man, as soon as I walked away and I had that first moment to myself, just kind of breaking down.
Yeah.
And you want to offer that mental health help to your deputies, like I said, jailers, dispatchers, firefighters, and volunteer firefighters. The same thing. You want that's peer support through the sheriff's office. There's chaplain services. There's lots of different services that are out there that can be offered to the first responders. And that's something that if elected, that I would love to have a group effort. Not only just mental health professionals, but also religious professionals as well, because it's the more ways that you attack a problem, the better way you have finding a solution to it. So that's something I'd love to do.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think a lot of churches would, if the opportunity was presented to churches, I think they would love to get involved with law enforcement. And I think we need some churches to step up in that area anyways, man, and take care of the law enforcement. And because here's the deal, law enforcement is expected to be there for everybody. And a lot of times nobody's there for them. So I love that idea. Let's talk about this. What are your thoughts on recruitment and retaining quality deputies if you're elected the sheriff?
Man, that's a huge thing as well. So something that I've brought up since the beginning of my campaign is the recruitment aspect of it. I remember when I first applied to be a police officer, they said that there was, I want to say, like 300 plus people that applied. 30, I think it was 31 started the academy and 13 graduated. Now, if you look, I mean, you're lucky if you get the amount of applications for the spots that you want. And there are obviously challenges to that. And something that I would love to do and utilize is the military bases that we have here in our state. We have Maxwell, Gunner, Rucker, Bennings right across the state line, Redstone Arsenal. So you have all these people that already know how to serve their country, and they can then serve our community. And you have these people that were either military, police, or security forces, and they already have some sort of training for law enforcement. Obviously military law enforcement is different than civilian, but you already have some sort of background into it. And they want to continue that law enforcement when they get out. They're like, I like doing the law enforcement aspect of it, but this moving around every 2 or 3 years, or being deployed for 6 to 12 months, that isn't great for my family. I want to sit down somewhere, with my family, plant roots, but continue my law enforcement career. And when they get out of the military, they have these job fairs, or they have these counselors that say, hey, where are you planning on going? What do you plan on doing? That kind of stuff. And there are, different agencies that send recruiters to these places. And whether it just be literature or a person, I would love for the Autauga County Sheriff's Office to send that to these local bases, because a lot of people like coming to Alabama after they get out because of the veterans services that are offered here. And not only that, Autauga County is a great place to raise a family, in my opinion. Yep. And so, and what would be great for that for us as well is, a usual police academy, I think, is 13, 14 weeks now. If we were able to get somebody that is already trained in the military and get them and hire them on, they just got to do a 2-week lateral. It's like, if you're coming from Georgia and you're a police officer and you want to be a police officer in Alabama, you got to go through a lateral course. So that can get them on the streets sooner. Yeah. It's less resources that we have to spend. It's, we got to pay every time that somebody's sent to the police academy. It's cheaper to send them to a lateral versus a full academy as well. So, that would be great for recruitment, in my opinion. And when it comes to retention, the communication is a huge thing. There's, look at Montgomery Police Department. They struggle with their recruiting and retention, and they offer just about as much as or more than anybody else in the area. But people don't go to places just for pay. They want a great work environment. Yeah. They want a great place that they can live and raise their families. So that is one thing as well. And then something that I'd love to try and do is offer some sort of whether it be like a YMCA or gym membership or something, because there's certain things that I believe that a sheriff can offer to its employees, whether, like I said, it's the YMCA where your kids can go play basketball or soccer or whatever, or it's a gym membership. We got 2 24/7 gyms in Prattville and Autauga County. That's something that, the guys that work on nights or days can go and they can do, and, be something to offer them just to show that they are, valued. And then, listen to them as well. One thing that I remember, in my career, is just being able to talk to your leaders and just address your problems and just make sure that, hey, that person that even though his badge may say sheriff or whatever is just a person like me and might have the same issues, might have gone through the same problems that I've gone through before, whether it be, hey, I'm having a hard time with, this night shift schedule, or whether I'm having a hard time because, my car is broken down 3 or 4 times and it's always the same issue. You keep sending it to the same guy. He's just replacing the same thing, or, personal issues. Being there, being able to listen and have that open communication with the sheriff and its employees is huge for retention.
Awesome. What qualities make someone an effective sheriff?
Leadership and administrative capabilities. I believe that, leadership is great because that's who people follow, is a leader. But, I've seen people that are great leaders, but they can't run an organization to save their lives. And, that's why, I believe you should be able to delegate to your people and stuff. But, ultimately the buck stops at the sheriff. If something goes right or wrong, it's the sheriff's responsibility. Now, it might be delegated to somebody else to do it, but the person that delegated that is the sheriff. That's it. And so, being able to have that administrative capability is an important part too, because you may delegate something to somebody that doesn't have, maybe you're the only one that has experience to that. So you need to say, hey, I'm going to give this to you, but this is where you need to go. This is who you need to talk to, that kind of stuff. So, administration is a huge part because obviously you are the administrator for the sheriff's office. So that's a great quality for a sheriff. And then also just being humble, my gosh, I've seen people that have either gained rank or position. I'm not even saying just the sheriff. It could be somebody that I, got rank in whatever agency I worked at, and as soon as it seems like they got that little bit of authority, that little bit of a power, it's completely changed them. They used to be, man, I hate this. I don't know why we do this. To being the person like, you got to do this because that's the way it's always been done. And I hate that. Yeah. Gosh, that is the worst thing I hate to hear. I mean, if I hear that and it doesn't make sense, that's the way we always been done. Well, why do we always do it this way if it keeps coming out either subpar or not well at all, So, being able to understand that you're there for them, they're not there for you.
Yes, that's awesome. So let me ask you this question. If you're elected sheriff, how do you plan on balancing the budget?
Well, clearly, you're given a set amount by the county commission, and it's important that you stay within there. Now, there are different things that you can do, and grants is a great resource to any law enforcement agency in this country. And I heard some people complain saying, we're fully staffed. Well, if you're fully staffed, then why is we're only have this many people? And well, that's what I'm budgeted. Well, there are grants out there. The COPS grant. COPS grant is a grant that is provided by the federal government that will give you, based off of your call volume and your population size, so many deputies or police officers, whatever it may be. They will pay you to hire those people, and they will pay for the salary for a certain amount of time. Now, after that amount of time, you gotta come up with it. But just through just the usual, retirements, people moving because my spouse got another job and I got to move here, that kind of stuff. At least you already have those people there instead of having to run and catch up to being behind again. Police Fest, that's another grant that is offered every year by the federal government. We'll pay for, I think it's up to $750 or $850 last time I looked. We'll pay for your police vest. And that's something that's got to be bought every 5 years. That's something people don't realize. Police vests have an expiration on them. So that's something that's got to be bought every 5 years. Grants are out there to be able to, help those smaller to medium-sized agencies that necessarily don't have the tax base or whatever. But then also something else is, my dad, I told you he worked for Schwann's, but after he left Schwann's, he was a small business owner. And I know what it's like to, having every time, I was out and I wanted a little extra money from Dad, I'd go work, with a small business. I remember I asked him if he could get me McDonald's, and then I was like, all right, what'd I make today? Well, you made about $12 minus the $8 that you got for the Big Mac combo at lunchtime, So, it's stuff like that. And, you got to make sure that you are not only just spending money to either, have the new flashiest things or to, look to keep up with the Jones, that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that what you spend money on is purposeful and has a reason for it. You want to make sure that, you went, like, for example, something, that's been brought up now with the jail is the third floor. The third floor has never been finished since that jail was built. And something that I would like to do with elected is, the federal agencies, U.S. Marshals, will pay to house federal inmates at your jail. I would like to look at the third floor and say, all right, well, how many inmates can we hold here? All right, if I can hold this many inmates, this is how much I'd make if I was to hold federal inmates. Now, obviously, I would subtract, the salaries and the benefits for the jailers, the extra jailers that I have to hire for that, and take it to the county commission and say, listen, this is what it would cost to finish the jail. This is how much I could bring in using federal, inmates to pay it off. It would be paid off in this amount of time. And after that, that's extra money that we would come in at the sheriff's office that we don't have to come asking for y'all. That way you can use to buy cars or whatever. And, just bring it up just like every other, person would in this world. Make sure that we are good stewards of the taxpayers' money, but also know that there's other resources out there that can help the county.
That's right. Let me ask this question right here. Why should people in the county, okay, because you have a few people, a few different cities and towns. Let me say it this way. Why are you different than the other candidates?
Well, something I believe that sets me apart from the other candidates is, I'm not born and bred in Autauga County. I'm moved here. I'm a transplant. I'll admit it. I mean, I've been a transplant since 9 years old, but I'm not from here. I've decided to grow up and stay here, raise my family here, and I've had the opportunities to go to other places, but I've decided to to set my roots here. Like I've said, when you get those people leaving from the military, set roots. And when I started this campaign, I knew what I wanted to do because I believed this would be the best benefit for the sheriff's office and its citizens. And from day one, whenever I announced my candidacy, I launched a website, and you can go look. Everything that I'm saying now is the exact same thing that's been on my website. I haven't changed. I've told a lot of people my ideas, and people, nobody has said, I don't think you should do this. People have said, no, that's a great idea. Even if you don't win this time, I would like for you to run again. So that way, if you, run again, you could win and implement these ideas, because that's a great idea. I've been consistent. I've been there, transparent, posting my ideas, whether it be on, social media, website, or in person, if you've come and met me, and I believe, if I am genuine with the people, that they'll see that I'm not a politician. I'm not trying to say do one thing and that as soon as I get elected, do something else. I believe that, what sets me apart from the other candidates. Now, there's been, other candidates that have done some of the same things, but I believe everything that I've laid out, that's what makes me different, all the totality.
That's awesome. And, this is why we want to do these episodes, because we want you guys, especially the citizens, to see the difference in between the candidates. Here's the last question. Well, it's not a question. I would like for you to address the people of Autauga County and just share your heart with them for a moment and tell them why they should vote for you.
Absolutely. So like I've said, from the beginning, I've put the same consistent message. I'm not here to try and get some sort of political power grab, whatever. I'm just the same Nick Cognasi that I've been since as long as I can remember. I've just wanted to be able, and I've run to make sure I believe I can make a difference. And in doing that, I said, I'm going to run. This is why I'm going to run. I haven't, changed my reasoning or messaging. It's the same consistency. I believe that as your sheriff, I can provide a better service and make a better sheriff's office to serve the public of Autauga County. And that's why I believe I deserve your vote, May 19th.
Well, Nick, I appreciate you coming
Absolutely.
on.
I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you sharing your heart with the people. And I want to share this Bible verse before we get off. And for those of you that may be watching, maybe you don't know the Lord Jesus. I want to tell you that it's the greatest decision that I ever made. And I want to share this verse. It's Ephesians 5, verse 10. And it's one of my favorite verses. It says, carefully determine what pleases the Lord. And I just want to challenge you guys. Maybe you're going through a difficult situation. Maybe, some things are not going your way. Carefully determine what pleases the Lord. And at this time, I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray for your family.
Thank you.
And let's just go to the Lord. Lord, we thank you for Nick for coming onto the podcast. Lord, we pray that you bless his family, God. Lord, we pray that you touch them. Lord, bless his children. God, we just thank you, Lord, that he took the time, Lord, to come on this podcast, Lord, and just showed the people who he was. Lord, we pray that you bless and keep him. Lord, that your face shines upon him, Lord, and is gracious. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen.
Listen, May 19th is a huge day, okay, for Autauga County. It's some historical votes are going on. Get to the polls. Go and vote. Amen. We
Amen.
love you guys. We appreciate you coming on. If you have any prayer requests, anything we can pray and just believe God, leave a comment below. Mr.
Absolutely.
Cognasi,
Thank you again, Corey.
Thank you for coming. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon.